Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Welcome to the first plenary session of NEDIS. I'm so excited to be here. Listening to the welcome address from our Managing Director, Dr. Mudufeso Latiju. It's been such a long journey, getting here, and we're really excited to be presenting the 6th edition of the NEDIS Education Innovation Summit. And also listening to the commissioner deliver her very passionate keynote address. I made a comment in the chat room. I said, it's like she saw our notes for drafting the agenda for the summit, because really that's the burning question in our hearts. What's the promise of education in Africa? When we ask young people to go through the education system, what are we offering to them in return? What skills and competencies do they take away to develop sustainable livelihoods in life? And so this has been a really good conversation, and we've only done 2 sessions. So I'm really excited to be going into this panel discussion with 2 wonderful panelists. Unfortunately, we have apologies from one of our panelists, the Honorable Obafela Bankolimo, who is unable to join us this morning due to circumstances beyond his control. But we're going to be having Dr. Tunji Adegbeson and Ms. Barbara Kasimo as the 2 panelists for this plenary session, teaching the skills of the future today. So can we have our panelists join me on the screen? And make sure everybody can hear me. Good day, Ms. Kasimo. It's really nice to meet you. And hello, Dr. Tunji. Can you both hear me? Okay, Dr. Tunji, you can hear me. You're both muted. So if you just unmute and then we'll go into it.
Done. Yeah, muted now.
Fantastic. So we're just going to go straight into it. We have about 40 minutes to have this discussion, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So please, participants, as you're listening, if you have questions, just put them in the chat box and we'll address them as we go along. So skills development is quite the broad phase, right? Because children in our educational systems, or young people in our educational systems, there's an ever-growing range of skills that is required for young people to develop, from foundational competencies like literacy and numeracy, language literacy, scientific literacy, digital literacy, financial literacy, all the way to more complex skills such as technical and vocational skills, or what we now know, or what is popularly known as the 21st century skills, which include competencies like critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, as well as character qualities like curiosity, creativity. I'll just ask you to tell us about yourself, your background, and really what your perspective is on the skills of the African youth population, whether it be a deficit in skills or a surplus in skills. And I'll start with you, Ms. Kasimo, with your background with the Association of Commonwealth Universities and the very popular Commonwealth Scholarship. So what is your perspective on the skills of the African youth? And then we'll take it from there.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me well. Thank you again for the invitation to join today's conference. My name is Barbara Kusumu, and where do we start? So my current role is as Director of Membership Programs and Development at the Association of Commonwealth Universities, and we are an association representing 500 universities across 50 countries. A little bit more about my background and why that sort of speaks to what we're talking about today. So very much similar to what the Honourable Commissioner spoke to. I grew up in a Nigerian household, doctor, lawyer, accountant, pick one, and very much with the aspiration that university should guarantee an outcome in terms of employment. I grew up in London, and so very much looking at the employment landscape in the UK. I set up a social enterprise to improve employment amongst underrepresented groups, so ethnic minorities in a UK context, but also looking at how we can harness entrepreneurial skills to be able to move beyond just the traditional careers. And now currently at my role at the Association of Commonwealth Universities, we essentially are looking at what is the role of higher education in being able to support and challenge some of those potentially negative outcomes. So if we sort of look at the landscape of sub-Saharan Africa at the moment, we know that 16 million young people in Africa are facing unemployment, and this number is growing rapidly. Now, higher education institutions can play a pivotal role in addressing this crisis by educating essentially the continent's brightest minds and future leaders. However, we know that higher education within the continent is still underdeveloped in places, and that's really as a result of maybe a low prioritization and investment. We see that women are still severely underrepresented within higher education. And at times, we see that higher education universities often operate in isolation from their wider ecosystem. And as a result, we see that many African graduates remain unemployed, while we see that juxtaposition of a shortage of skilled labor in many sectors, particularly within science and technology. We hear from employers that say that new graduates do not have the power skills or the skills for the 21st century that are needed to succeed in the workplace, whether that's critical thinking, teamwork, communication, emotional intelligence. And many students, many young people may be looking at higher education as a pathway just for a public sector role, a government employment, rather than the broader economic opportunities and jobs that are available. And so there's a real opportunity to leverage better data, better pedagogy, better training and investment, and links to the private sector. It links to broader employers in order to be able to create employment opportunities and support young people to succeed in the future. And there's a quote that I read many years ago, and it's something that resonates with me till now, and it's, your employability is your job security, not the job itself. And so as we're discussing and reflecting on this topic today, that's the thing that I think we want to not lose, is at any stage of education, how are we ensuring that we're developing and harnessing and creating an environment that allows for those skills to be developed in terms of the transferable skills in the workplace. So I'll stop there for now, but that would be my opening gambit.
Thank you, Ms. Kasim. Dr. Tunji.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Tunji, although most people call me TJ. I'm the CEO of Giddy Mobile, and we're a learning, engineering, and learning technology company. By way of background, I've been in education for over 20 years, which probably reveals my age a little bit. But even beyond that, right from my teens, I've been fascinated by teaching. So I was one of these lazy kids who used to be lastminute.com, and I preferred to play football, run around, and then would have to catch up very fast. So I discovered I had a knack for summarizing really fast and getting to the core of all the classes I missed. And my classmates in secondary school came to notice that. So I used to have these last-minute fast tutorials, and we used to do pretty well. And that led me to thinking, okay, so then what have we been doing all this while? Why? I mean, so does learning have to be that complicated? I later got to know that, yes, there is a lot of depth you miss in that speed, but I've been fascinated by participant-centered learning since I was really young. So I studied engineering, fell in love with technology, been coding since I was 10. And then the two came together when I found a job in business school. I was leading on the strategy sessions at the Lagos Business School for about a decade. And I was fascinated by the two professional schools I was used to. Engineering is a professional school. In academia, in pure academia, in the ivory tower, those of us who are applied are looked down upon by the pure scholars, right? So those in the natural sciences, those in the physical sciences, the biologists, the philosophers, the scientists, they're like seeking truth for the sake of truth, just what is thing, what is reality. Whereas in medical school, law school, engineering school, it's like we're mercenaries, we're seeking truth for practice, so you're trying to train these engineers to go build a bridge. And the other guys in the pure sciences are looking at you guys are just, you're sellouts, right? Or in medicine. But that was a very important experience for me because the professional schools, law, they have two constituencies, law, medicine, engineering. Their constituencies aren't only to the subject matter. Their constituencies are to the people who are going to take that subject matter into the real world and need to put food on the table. So you can't just say, okay, this is the principle of engineering 101. And then your engineering graduate comes and tells you that Nigerian statutes doesn't allow that, or we don't have enough cement or concrete. So then the lecturer has to come up with a new approach. Same way, you can just teach someone medicine, the person goes into the real world and then find something different. You can't say, well, I taught you already, go and figure it out. So you found that that was the second stage. The first stage in my life was really thinking learning doesn't have to be that hard and it should be very focused on the learner. The second stage was the learner-centered aspect of learning is not only the cognition and the assimilation, it's what the learner is going to do with the learning for his or her life. They're going to have to deliver services to somebody and get paid. So the ivory tower cannot be disconnected from that real world because you need to give the skills that will find employment and that will enable highly paid employment. And I found this in business school because business schools are like a brand machine. You build a strong brand. Education is a product, and I'll tell you where I'm going with all this. Education is a product that you cannot value until you have it, but we pay fees at the beginning of the term, right? So think about it. Imagine you think about the services in the world that you pay for first, then you consume. Education is one of those. You pay at the beginning of the term and then find out whether it was worth paying throughout the school session. And business schools take that to an extreme because business schools charge a huge fee, right? Like the elite ones charge you $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And then 2 years later, you find out whether it works, right? But then what do the business schools do? They impart those knowledge and skills. Then they do a lot of branding, attract the employers to campus. And they're like, my graduates are super good. And then the whole game works. I pay that high bill, and then Morgan Stanley or MTN or somebody's going to show up on campus. And then if I do well enough, I'm going to get a good job. And for a school that does not compromise on the educational quality, for a school that isn't just a kind of manufacturing line pretending to train and connect you to companies, then you start to find a very interesting mix, which got me thinking about vocational and skills. If you think about the business school in a general way, I think these are managerial skills, and we need to give those skills. We need to give them in a credible way, and we need to help. No serious business school will say, I taught you, go find a job, because nobody's going to show up next time. So part of that education is, doing some advertising, doing some glitzy, glossy stuff so that employers will show up on campus so that everybody's needs are taken care of. So I'm very, very big when it comes to skill development and to vocational and to our youth and to what the Honorable Commissioner spoke about this morning, to the push and pull sides of education. And that's what I think we lose a lot, because those of us who are in education, who have been trained in education, are very often focused on the cognitive and the classroom and the assimilation, codification, storage, retrieval aspect of learning. But then the students leave the classroom, leave the institution, and go look for their livelihoods. And there has to be a handshake, because if we skill 500 million African youth, let's say we skill them with singing, but there's no demand for singing, we just successfully and efficiently wasted our time, and that, well, we didn't waste time. Education, builds up a human being. That's also true. So education isn't only for getting a job, but coming to what we're saying, when you're someone can't eat and you're telling the person that being built up, that's really not working either. But yes, if you just go skill everybody up for jobs that don't exist, then you are making an error. If you go create jobs and employment and investment and there's nobody to fill those roles, then you also wasted time. So I am passionate and would love to talk to the push and pull aspect, to two sides. One is, so education can no longer sit on her own in this ivory tower talking to herself. Education needs to talk to Ministry of Economic Planning, somebody on jobs, somebody on investment, and we have to together figure out what can be taught, where it can be used, what is demanded, and therefore what needs to be taught. But the push and the pull, we can't only push. We've not done as good a job as we ought to in the push. Sometimes people talk about curriculum, and I say that, well, if we were teaching the year 1999 curriculum very, very well, then our graduates would be as good as Americans, Chinese, Singaporeans in 1999, which they probably are not. So it's not only about how up-to-date the curriculum is, also about how we're teaching. So, but yes, we do need to teach, but we also need to think about the market. And it's not an unknown. There's some people who are specialists in that. That's why I found in business school. There's some people who are specialists in that market side of things. There are people who are specialists in the human capacity side of things. We need to talk together to create those jobs and to create the skills that those jobs require. So I think that's my big theme, the push, the pull, the handshake between the classroom and what the learners will use, what they learn in the classroom. And that's what participant learner-centered gives you, because that learner doesn't exist only in the classroom. The learner has to go somewhere else. So if we're learner-centered, we'll think about both sides. I need to give you something because you need to grow, but you also need to put food on tables. So how do we give you what you need? What are people hiring for? That's a good one. Okay, I'll add that to my curriculum. And that handshake, push and pull, I think, is a big change. And I think academics need to not be scared of that world. Academics are very highly skilled, very highly trained people. But sometimes I think they a bit arrogantly look down on, oh yeah, you guys who are just there making money. I don't see why making money is a bad thing. All human beings need to eat. Anyway, once I get started on this, I go too far. But I think those would be my own introductory points.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Tunji. Thank you so much, both of you. I have a follow-up question for you, Ms. Kasimo. You made a comment when you were speaking about how sometimes the industry doesn't consider new graduates, should I say, ready for the workplace. They're usually requiring other soft skills, or should I say transferable skills. So I wanted to ask you to please break that down a bit further. When you say transferable skills, what are these skills you think that employers are looking for that can easily transition from education to employment? And I say this because I'm somebody who studied one thing in the university and is now practicing an entirely different thing. Even though sometimes, in my future, I may segue back to, what my academic background is, but I would like to hear more about what those transferable skills are and how schools can, should we say, prepare young people more to be able to transition successfully. You're muted, please. If you could unmute yourself. Somebody can help unmute her.
I think I'll just stay unmuted.
Fantastic.
Okay. So what are employers looking for? What are those transferable skills? So having sort of probably worked with and alongside about 50 to 100 employers across a number of different sectors, and specifically looking at the talent pipeline and what employers are looking for, I would say that what is coming out and what the feedback from employers is that, one, where is the experience? Where is what are you, beyond your degree, how have you proactively gained experience? And that can be formal and informal, formal or informal. So the formal piece might be, okay, you've studied business and therefore you've done an internship or you volunteered in a local business or similar, and you've kind of gone down a very traditional route. For others, it may be, actually, what did you do with your time outside of study?
Right.
So in many cases, it's saying, okay, so, however many hours you spent studying, great, we know that, but what have you done with the rest? How have you volunteered? Have you been, have you set up a side hustle online, doing, moonlighting as, whatever, it doesn't matter, a YouTuber, an influencer, and what you're doing is less important and more about the fact that you are doing something. Because if you're competing with so many other candidates, what makes you stand out? And your ability when you're attending and sort of putting yourself forward, you want to be able to have a unique selling point. And so being able to demonstrate your ability to be entrepreneurial, whether or not you want to set up a business is not the point, it's the trait. And it's saying, actually, can I problem solve? How do I look at a challenge and how do I ask the right questions? Am I curious? Can I go into a room and be able to network with someone and ask very important, critical questions? Do I just take things as the status quo, or do I challenge it? Where are those transferable skills? If I'm thinking about creativity, am I just wanting to, as a candidate, am I just thinking about doing things as they always have been done? Or am I thinking about, actually, there's a new way of doing it? Because what we do see is that beyond, similar to what Dr. TJ was saying, is that beyond simply just churning out people for work, we want people to be able to, the value of education is holistic. And so we want to be able to demonstrate that it's not just, okay, I've got something on paper and therefore that qualifies me to be able to do the job, but also I've demonstrated that I can do more. I am curious, I'm problem solving, I'm thinking beyond just the job. Because even that horizon scanning, and I guess the bit that we haven't touched on, but I think is important, and if we continue with the analogy of the handshake, I really like that analogy, is the role of higher education as an employer, higher education institutions as their employer as well. And so that means when we're thinking about people going into academia, both academic and non-academic staff actually, is what's the incentive there as well? And we have to think win-win. So we want to be able to attract people from industry to be able to come and be visiting lecturers or to be subject experts in a number of different things as well. And so actually what you want to be able to have is an environment that is both motivated, that the teaching staff, the lecturers, the academics, and just the professional staff within the institution are motivated to want to make those links as well, both for their own personal development, but also to be able to pour back into others. And so for me, when we're talking about those transferable skills, those power skills, the top ones would be, it's that curiosity. It's that ability to be entrepreneurial and to problem solve, to think about doing things differently. Thirdly, it's going the extra mile. So what is it that you're doing that no one else is doing? If you're trying to stand out, how can you create those opportunities for yourself? And I think the beauty of technology is that those barriers are less and less, because there's no excuse. You can do something, and you don't need to have too much resource to be able to do something. And as long as you're able to then make those links and demonstrate that, that already puts you head and shoulders above others. And what is the role of that? And we're in a globally connected world. So there are things that you can do, even if it's simply creating a campaign and setting that up on Instagram or Facebook, and then suddenly being able to provide news on whatever the local politics might be, or on any subject of interest. And it's thinking about that, but also how do we work in partnership with the HE community as well to create that ecosystem beyond just simply it being a conveyor belt for people to just go into any job. We want people that go into roles and go into employment, but also are doing it according to where the needs are as well, in order to think more beyond just, okay, I need to get a job, but also this is also contributing to the local economy. This is also contributing to the skills gap that we have. Also, this allows for wider international collaboration, because the world over, we know that we continue to see those gaps within science and technology. And to be honest, we don't know what the jobs of the future will be. And so the jobs that exist now did not exist when I was at university. And so we are constantly having to evolve and have conversations, but also make sure that there are more people in the room in order to be able to shape that agenda and the opportunities that might come up as a result.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to come back to you, because I'm glad that you mentioned some of these transferable skills. You listed them, like curiosity and the ability to problem solve or to create solutions, you know, out of your circumstances. And we're going to come back to how do we, so then, because the topic before us is teaching the skills of the future today. So we're going to come back to how do we really begin to help children to, or facilitate young people to develop the skills, even while they're in school. But for you, Dr. Tunji, I wanted to ask, you've kind of, should I say, issued a challenge to the academic sector. Okay, not issued a challenge, but like the analogy that you use, we need to have the handshake between education, that's the ivory towers, and the marketplace. And I wanted you to contextualize that for Nigeria and maybe Africa, if you can. You know, looking at the population of young people. And when we say young people, I think in the context of NEDIS, we mean children that are school age and just, you know, after, you know, who are transitioning from school into the marketplace, or what marketplace exists, you know, in Africa. So contextualize that a little bit by telling us what your perspective is on the potential of young people and what really we should be thinking about in terms of their skills development.
Okay, beautiful. Sorry, let me just connect this. I was wondering whether it's, is it possible to share my screen? I wonder, or not?
Is it possible to share his screen? Yes, it is. Okay. Somebody will, I think, enable you.
Okay, I just want to, I have a thing related to what you just said. Okay, it's going to be enabled. Okay. And if it's not possible, it's fine. But it's something.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, good. All right. So I'll just put this up briefly. And so my concept here is just to show, let me remove this, the size of the challenge we're talking about. So you refer to the number of, there are many numbers about Nigeria, but fundamentally, this is what we're talking about. So we're talking about 120 million people below, between 0 and 25, and fundamentally some 100 million people below 18. So first point is size, number of people, right? The second thing I'm going to do is show you for a few seconds what a fellow developing country like us has done. They've been working, this is India. So we work, my company also works in India. And this is a project they've been working, it's called Skill India, right? And I just want to show you how they went about the Skill India project. I want to show you this next one, is quite interesting. They actually broke down, this is a national, so this is a public document, you can get it. They actually have a Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship in India. And this is actually a framework they built, and I'm going to use this to answer your question. And they said, okay, what are all those skills? And they came up and built a skills qualification council and said, okay, these are all the types of skills. Again, this is India. They wanted to do 500 million kind of jobs, and they broke their whole country into this. And then they partnered with the private sector to say, okay, per sector, these are the number of people currently there, this number of million, these are the number of million we feel, this talking to handshake, we feel it can grow into. About this year or next year, they'll be reporting how far they went. And then given that this is the amount of capacity we need to create. So we need to train 120 million people, so to speak. Again, this is not saying, this is just giving an example. So with that, I just want to use that as input into addressing what you were saying. And I can share these stuff with you guys later. Like I said, they're public documents. So for me, the first thing that always influences my thinking about the challenge facing Africa and Nigeria in particular is scale. So when you think about the question you just asked me, I always start by thinking of some other statistics the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics releases every year on the banking sector. And the entire banking sector, and I'm saying this from memory, is definitely less than 300,000. It's about 200 and something thousand people. We know that the graduates, right, from that population pyramid I was showing you, we're producing 300,000 to 400,000 graduates every year in Nigeria, if you just look by NYSC numbers. So even if every single one of them, so just the banking sector entirely is just like that number. So we graduate the banking sector every year. And then so anybody who has lived in Nigeria over 10, 15 years, you would have noticed somehow every year this job issue gets harder. This number of graduates, number of cousins, nephews, relatives, children or friends that can't get a job, you notice this thing seems to be getting tighter. It is those same statistics. Is that larger number coming out, nowhere to stick them into. Telecoms is even worse. That one will be 40 to 50K. And then most importantly to me is that 1 in 5 of those who are finishing SS3 get into university. So to me, I'm one of the lucky privileged, like many of us on this call, who went to university. My parents could afford it, but the 4/5 can't. So when we look at those 600,000 we churn out from the graduates and we say we can't find jobs for them, let's not also forget the ×4 of the number, the 80%, the 3 million of the same age who definitely are not fitting into banking sector if they could. So the first challenge is the scale. So we have to think, and I'm going to speak more to the pool because Barbara has talked a lot about the push, and also we've heard about that in the morning. So there are a lot of skill sets required, and we know a lot about the competence gaps for current employment and not traditional established situations. I want to add a point, which is that the current employment and the traditional established institution cannot soak up the people we need. There are too many to fit into. Some should, and it's very important. So, but we have to also, as parents and as people, start thinking of the non-traditional and say, okay, what can soak up, so to speak, 3 million people? That's 10 banking sectors. It's not banking. That is, 30 or 40 telecom sectors. It's not working. So I would like to advocate that we change how we look at service providers. A service provider is a mechanic. A service provider is a hairdresser. A service provider is someone in the hospitality industry, an artist, a singer. You see, these kind of professions that are volume sensitive. The more car owners you have, the more car problems you will have. So even if the banking sector grows from 300 to 500,000, it's not just using a number. The growth is not just the 200,000 high-paid jobs. Those 200,000 high-paid jobs each need nanny, each need maybe driver, car, beautician. So there are service jobs that can grow on the back of primary jobs. So we should not look down on those skill sets. And in fact, those are, to me, very proud professions because they deal with human beings, not with computers. And then that brings some new skill sets like service, customer service, attitude, smile. Do you get this impression when you go abroad, you go to a random checkout counter in a random store and the ladies or the person is smiling, right? I remember catching one as I turned away, the smile just disappeared. Maybe she was having a but that smile is part of the job description to make me feel comfortable. That is training. It wasn't just dropped it to her. Someone has trained her how to be a front desk officer. You need to smile at that, but that's a skill set, how to deal with human beings, how not to be crude and hard, and how to not just be like, let me just squeeze this money out of you, but to take care of you and help you, serve you and create value for you. So I think that human-centered skills, skills around and training around customer care, not just service, and user care, an attitude of caring for other people is really, really fundamental for the service industry. And the service industry can be a multiplier for the limited growth we have in other sectors. So just saying that scale is a very important thing, and that we need exponential job demand, and the primary industries may not do that, but services to those growing in those industries can do that. The second one is tapping into global demand. So the skill set you need to create jobs is not only the skills for Nigeria, right? Because as we've seen from the pandemic, you now start seeing that, okay, I can be a software developer. I bear the brunt of this in a good way, right? Because costs have gone through the roof. The dollar cost to hire a software developer. I love it in a way because more young people who don't have wealthy backgrounds, they can just write this code and they're earning $1,000 a month because the American company is chasing him, because the American would be paying $9,000 a month. So that $1,000 Nigerian is so cheap, whereas the Nigerian employer now has to match. So it's good, it's challenging, but it's not only software development, because if you look at those projected software development jobs, they're in the hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million, but we need to soak up 40, 50 million. So I advocate tech enablement of agro, of med, of edu, of hairdressing, so not just tech jobs core, but maybe I trained in philosophy. Has anybody checked whether there's some philosophical challenge that software can help with? Then I can do it from Nigeria. So someone can be sitting in University of Berkeley doing that their philosophy thing, and now I bring tech in, I can join in and get paid there. What about Japan? They have all these tree shaping and all this origami and stuff. Can it be done from Nigeria? Maybe we should start teaching digital origami skills. So I'm making 2 points. One point about skills that are focused on humans, such that you can benefit from other humans' growth, by providing services they will pay for. And secondly, skills that cross borders, so that you can benefit from other wealthier nations' growth, that not just only your own growth. I hope it's not too unrelated, but that's, because there's experts. I think we're good in edu on the primary, and it's just to delineate it. But from the pool side, thinking about skills development from that point of view, skills development that can tap into opportunity, I would say that across the world, you are getting aging populations. The only thing I don't know is how to do care remotely, right? Because for instance, I know in the US, one big issue now, even in Europe, in Netherlands, in many countries, is aging populations, many people with elderly parents. So I don't know if you can invent a digital robot to take care of someone's mom from Lagos and get paid in dollars, but human skills, because you can tap into the growth of other humans. Just a point to put out there.
Okay, thank you so much. I think there's something that you said that really brought the conversation into sharp focus for us in Africa. And I think that's the thing about skill, about the sheer number of people that we have to skill and transition into employment. And that's why we have to consider some of these non-trendy less trendy, but we definitely have to start thinking along those lines. The commissioner in her address commented on how she doesn't like to, it would be better for us to move beyond talk shows, to start thinking about how, which I think Dr. Tunji, you started to do. But I have a question for both of you about collaboration. So how do we strengthen collaboration between our tertiary institutions, our universities? And Barbara, this really speaks to you because of the Commonwealth perspective. So there's the, I don't know if I should say this or how to say this correctly, but we have what is referred to as brain drain, and how young people are systematically leaving the country, seeking greener pastures. This opportunities that, Dr. Shinji is making the arguments that we begin to create for ourselves in our own countries and even across our borders, so that as we skill our young people, they're able to deliver those skills to markets. That I've talked about, today in this conversation, that we've said are, transferable, that are critical, problem solving, and taking initiative and collaboration. So what is the opportunity, what are the areas of collaboration that you see, Ms. Cassidy? And then Dr. Tunji, I think we have time for one more question, and then I have to take questions from the audience.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed some of what you said, but I'm hoping I catch the spirit of the question. So talk about collaboration, and you use the example of brain drain and some of the impact of that. So I'll try to speak to some of that. So one good thing that has come out of the pandemic has been accelerating the need for increased collaboration, and doing that in a way beyond borders. I would say from a Commonwealth and an association perspective, one of the big parts of our ambition and to build on what we've already started to do is to see how we can, you said at the beginning, oh yes, ACU, we're known for scholarships. And actually what we're trying to ensure that we're doing is strengthening our partners within the Global South, and ensuring that, so one of the things that we're exploring and some of our institutions are looking at is, for example, split site PhDs or split site masters, where we're not only saying, yes, it's great to come to the UK, or it's great to come to Australia, or wherever it might be, but it's equally saying it's important for us to be seeing some of those north-south collaborations and also south-south collaborations, beyond simply, yes, I'm having an experience, but also how do I make sure that I'm bringing that value back? And the question always has to be, one, we need to make sure any collaboration is win-win. So whether that is making the case from an employer's perspective, the incentive will be talent, the incentive will be thought leadership, and sort of that experience, but also a question for individuals, but also institutions is, what do we want to be known for? What is that reputation that we want to have? And I know if we think in a very traditional way, the perception of some careers or some vocational paths aren't seen as equal. And there's a need to really challenge that perception, because one, it's going where the jobs are, but two, looking at any degree or any qualification that you're doing, what does it allow you to do? So it's not just the title of the degree in itself, but also what are the things that are coming out of that? And so the question when we're thinking about collaboration is, how are we balancing the win-win? How are we able to demonstrate value for money, but also how can we have a clear value proposition? So collaboration for us as an association is about higher education institutions. It's about actually colleges and sort of further education, vocational education as well. It's about how we better partner with the private sector, with employers as part of that ecosystem, but also how we convene the sector and influence policy, and do that on a global scale. And those are the ways that we look at collaboration. But it's also about recognizing that you can go a lot further through partnership rather than trying to do everything by yourself. And so there's a need as well to recognize the importance of partnership to go further, partnership for greater impact. And for individuals that might be online today and joining this, it's about saying, just going back to that question, what do you want to be known for? And the person that is able to meet the need will have the demand, and will be able to meet that. And I think that I studied politics for my first degree and then international public policy for my master's. I'm neither in politics in that.
You're in good company.
but the critical thought, the ability to write, the ability to be able to analyze and digest large amounts of information and then translate that into something that is accessible, the ability to be able to go into a room and join the dots in a conversation is important, but also then being able to have that lens when thinking about something that's completely unrelated. So if I'm thinking about higher education, I'm thinking about policy, but I'm also entrepreneurial. So therefore I'm thinking about actually, how do we think win-win for employers who have a responsibility as well, not just to take talent, but also to play that back into society and to have a wider impact. So we know, for example, ESG, so environment, sustainability, governance, are really, really big, important things for businesses. So beyond simply having a job, what is the role that they, in terms of providing a job, what is the wider skills or what is the wider impact that they can have on communities? And that's being able to empower. That might be capacity building for, as I mentioned before, looking at the role of institutions, of education institutions as employers as well. And where is that opportunity for that capacity building and exchange for staff as well as students? But also thinking about just going back on that reputation piece and asking us as a society, as individuals, what do we want to be known for, and moving away from simply thinking that if I don't mention, whatever the traditional skills might be, then therefore, I don't add up. And actually, the person that can respond, the mechanic, has a role to play as much as someone that can, as much as the nurse, as much as the farmer. And it's about recognizing that, owning that, but also then being able to better change and challenge the perceptions of those that are that might think different to that. That might be for you, Dr. TJ, to add anything to.
Yeah, it seems like we lost Uti. Yeah, I could. I'm not sure whether to just go ahead or wait for her.
I mean, in the interest of time, maybe start and then she may come for the questions.
Okay, cool. So yeah, for me, I was thinking about it as you spoke, from the point of view of collaborations, and I know that the TEP Center is very big on collaboration. So collaboration is always a very important thing. I saw a comment in the chat box from someone who said that, I think it was a he, is under the impression that there isn't a very strong guiding policy framework for education in Nigeria. I have a lot of friends in the Ministry of Education at state and national level. I've expressed that sentiment sometimes. I've been responded to by saying, no, we have this policy and that kind of stuff. I would say that I'm not so convinced it's as robust as it could be, as clear and as communicated as it could be. The reason I mentioned that is because thinking about collaboration, the first thing I was thinking about was a stronger collaboration from the point of view of national and states. A lot of the brunt of education is borne by the states in the way Nigeria is designed. But so policy from the educational point of view, speaking to policy from the national development, economic development point of view. And if you don't really see any very, very, very strong, very, very robust policy at the from the education point of view, it's probably worse from the economic development and business point of view. We've had a couple of documents, Vision 2010, we've had a couple of things, 2020, but nothing very strong. So at the policy level, it would have been nice if I could say, oh, there's some folks who are thinking about this policy very robustly from the human capacity point of view, and some folks who are thinking about the economic development policy robustly from a policy point of view, and get them speaking to each other. Probably what we want to do is have very robust conversations on both sides and then have them speak to each other. So that's one point from the collaboration point of view. from my own experience, I think that from the point of view of businesses and companies and educational institutions, I have seen a lot of collaboration when there's mutual respect. So there are some universities in the country that are very well respected. There are some secondary schools that are very well respected, and those ones will always have CEOs and top industry leaders always show up for their events whenever they call them. Right. And on the other hand, there are people who, when you come from a certain institution, you will probably more easily get a job. Your scholarship is respected. So I think that speaking as an academic, I would love for us to do more work in terms of raising the profile and the quality, of that educationist, and the respect will come more from the economic side. Because if you sit in a class where all of us who were the highest in class went to work in XYZ bank, and the person who was perennially the last, who applied with us to study engineering, law, and this and that, and couldn't get in, then went to education, which had the lowest cutoff, then it's very unlikely that that person is going to bring come to your company to talk to you and you're going to pay attention. And of course, this is not a generalization, and there's somebody whose face I'm looking at right now, right at the top left of my screen, who leads StepSet, and who was those brilliant people who chose to go into education, right? Like myself. Yes, so, but it is the perception, right? So I would really love for us to think of ways of upgrading the status and I don't know what to call it, the role, the position of the teacher. I love, once upon a time, I used to feel that the highest thing I could say about myself is I'm a teacher. Teachers produce human beings. Everybody else produces artifacts. So if we could upgrade, if you say, oh, I am a teacher, and everybody says, wow, also I start clapping. If we could get there, then you would then have a situation where you have those kind of people, and then you train them better, make the education shouldn't have the lowest cutoff in the nation as it currently does. Shouldn't it have the highest, right? It's just like you have a lower cutoff to study education, physics, than you have to study physics, right? So it's like it's easier to teach physics than to study physics. So if we could make that educator of a higher status, upgrade that person and expose that person, so that from that level already, you have an educator who knows about companies, knows about industries, has been to XYZ telco. So as you're talking to that 15-year-old, you will say that, look at you, you're making noise, you don't know how to obey instructions. Don't you know that in companies, they always do appraisal, and your employer will, you drop in those things at that age, it sticks. But an educator who has never been inside, in fact, who would have an inferiority complex walking into a company, is not going to transmit that. So from the one point of view, there is at the policy level, but we still need to come back to seeing how to upgrade our teachers. We entrust, probably, I don't know if it's everywhere in the world, but probably in any African family, they would argue the most valuable thing they have in that family is their children, right? So the most valuable thing we have on earth, we entrust to them on a daily basis. And we don't think it's really smart to entrust a lot of attention to making them great, awesome, proud, confident, connected. So I'm talking about that handshake and collaboration. I would like more handshake and collaboration between educators and economic. But it's not going to happen if the economic do not respect the educators. And that's not going to happen unless we upgrade the educators and make them as powerful as they need to be, as respected as they need to be. Then that bridge will be easier, and then they will bring that learning into the classroom, and some stuff is going to be happening. So collaboration at the policy level, Barbara already talked about collaboration at the institutional level. I think also as an antecedent to collaborating more at the distinct companies and organizations' role, upgrading the educators and demanding very high standards. Not just, you can't just go and educate my child if you can't speak English. No, to be a teacher, you must be X, and would rather have only 2 teachers who are qualified than a million who are not. So that when you tell someone you're a teacher, they'll look up and say, wow, amazing. That person can do collaboration. But the person that is a teacher that nobody wants to collaborate with is not driving any collaboration whatsoever. So I think those are my final points.
Thank you so much. Just before I dropped off, I was going to respond to a comment that Barbara had made. You know, she kept using the words, what do you want to be known for? And I think it ties in with what you're saying about one of the ways to collaborate or bridge the gap between education and economy is improving the reputation and the way that even educators are perceived. And I think it also ties in with a lot of the comments I've been seeing in the chat box. You know, people have been saying, what is the vision, you know, for Nigeria? What is the vision for Africa? What do we want our young people to be? And I feel like if we are going to answer those questions, you know, answering the question of then who do we want our educators to be, you know, it ties in quite brilliantly. So we don't have a lot of time left. So I'm just going to take questions from the audience now. And I have one question that has been pending. And it's such a, it's like a come down to earth type of goes, how do we set up a curriculum that will accommodate the traditional scheme of work for passing exams as well as skill acquisition, say in a subject like English language, for instance? You know, so the person they're listening to us talk about bridging the gap between the education and the marketplace, or education and industry, and then they're asking, how practically do you do that? You know, so if you're teaching a subject like English, how do you ensure that this child is able to pass exams as well as develop the required skills? So over to you both.
Okay, I'll start. I think the first thing comes to mind is around challenging the fact that we shouldn't simply be teaching students to pass exams, because actually going into the world of work, that is not the transferable skill, because you then are not prepared to think outside the box. You don't know, you're taught to pass the exam. And if you pass the exam, yes, you know, you get your grade, but that in itself does not give you any guarantees. So I would challenge even the philosophy around sort of teaching to pass exams. I think we are, you know, and Dr. TJ has spoken to it as well, it's about the holistic value. So if someone says that they're teaching English language, okay, so what are the skills there? Okay, it's your ability to write, it's your creativity around literature and sort of the world, but also influencing what the future of literature can look like. It's saying, okay, if I'm strong in English language as a subject, then what are the industries and sectors that I can go into? Who are the people that have studied this already, and where are they now? So it's about thinking, it's thinking beyond the subject, but thinking about what has it allowed me, what are the enablers as a result of the particular subject, and what does that then allow me to do? So English language as a foundation is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I know traditionally someone might say, oh, does that mean you want to go into teaching? Is that the only sort of career? And it's not. But it's about thinking about, again, going back to what am I learning as a result of this topic? And if you're only learning how to write the exam, then that is not going to translate into an employment outcome. It's about going beyond that and saying, okay, if I can do English language, what does that allow me to do within tech? What does that allow me to do within engineering, or wherever it might be? We shouldn't underestimate the ability to be able to read and to write well. And I'm not talking about sort of the basic, I'm talking about the ability to pull together proposals and reports, to be able to think about evaluation and impact, and really demonstrate some of those things. So it's beyond simply writing, but also thinking about who are the people telling the stories. And if you're someone that is studying English language or similar, is you have an opportunity to tell the story and to do something beyond your degree, whether that is through, you know, social media or beyond. And it's thinking about what is that value add. So if you're competing with someone that maybe has studied a degree that is, you know, deemed as more prestigious, or deemed as one that is more obvious in terms of a career path, that goes back to the point around, what do you want to be known for? And what is it that you can do? What is in your hand and what is in your reach to allow you to be able to demonstrate a value add beyond simply having the degree? And I think even when we talk about the prestige or the perception of teachers or particular institutions, that is a challenge the world over. But it's one where I pose the question, what do you want to be known for? Because if if a particular institution, school, college, university decide that actually maybe we're just going to specialize here and we're going to be the best in agriculture, or we're just going to be the best in tech, or we're just going to home in on that one thing, but we're going to be the best at it, then suddenly the perception changes. You know, we're being based in the UK, where even within a UK context, you've got your Oxford and Cambridge, and then you've got those that wouldn't be considered particularly top tier universities. But the difference I see is that within those universities, they decide to specialize, and they say, okay, we're going to be known for this. It's going to be sport, it's going to be business, it's going to be this one thing. And actually we can demonstrate for employers that don't want to just recruit the usual suspects and recruit people in their own likeness. It allows them to be able to demonstrate a pool of potential beyond their traditional pipeline. And diversity and inclusion in the broadest sense is an agenda on most employers' priorities.
Thank you so much. I agree completely. I think to read here, somebody said, but I wanted to quickly refer to Dr. Tunji's experience, who says he spent his early days in school, you know, just summarizing, taking large content and just summarizing. And I think that that's a skill that is useful in life, you know, for communication, and you learn that in English language. So like Barbara said, it's really about not changing the paradigm about what we're educating people in the first place, not educating to pass exams, but educating for life and problem solving. Dr. Tunji, do you want to respond? Do you want to share any comments before I go to the chat box?
Just briefly, yes, I think so. You know, those who know me quite well know that this passing mania is a trigger, right? So I decided I would not speak first. So I also approached that. But, in the past, I've spoken about, yes, we really need to help and support and upgrade the educators. But as someone who was an academic for quite a while, I'll put this particular one squarely in the camp of the educator. That's the educator's job, right? So you shouldn't have a situation like I did in undergrad in Nigerian university. We were being taught software development, and you had to you had to have what you do in order to pass lecturer, and you had to have what you do. If you are really interested in learning to code, this is what you do. So you have two streams of work. This is the class one, which is outdated and old, and I just need to do that so that I can get an A. And this is the one that I'm really very interested in. A student shouldn't have to make that choice. That is the educator's problem. So the educator was not up to standard. And when you have an educator who, and yes, educators sometimes can feel a kind of false sense of power. Here I am, we're in my kingdom here. I control you. Your daddy is a billionaire, but I am the one who is going to control your destiny here. And so you have to kowtow and bow and do what I want you to do. And then I download some things on you. You have to repeat them back to me exactly as I gave them to you. Then I hereby permit you to move ahead with your life. Terrible, disastrous, horrible betrayal of the profession, betrayal of the vocation. That's not what an educator is there to do. When the educator does his or her job well, then you can have doing well in an exam and knowing converge, because what's going to happen is I'm supposed to communicate to you what you need to do well in life, then set up a system to evaluate whether you have acquired that. And in that case, you have an overlap between the testing and the capacity. But when the testing is serving a different role, then you have that overlap. But I would say that yes, the student or the learner should have a consciousness of where he or she is going and what you won't be with this educator forever. You are going to have to go ahead with your life, and you won't go to the employer and say, they didn't teach us in school. Then the employer will say, okay, when they teach you in school, come back, right? So unless the employer runs an educational institution. But on the other hand, having said which is the advice we'll give to our loved ones, it is a failure of the educator. That's the educator's work. And we shouldn't tolerate it. One of my toughest exams in undergrad, engineering 401, I'll never forget it, is always, every year was always the hardest, but it was an open book exam. You could bring every book on the planet, bring Wikipedia, bring everything, bring the internet itself. It's not going to help you because you need to know how to use that knowledge. And so the course was taught that way. And so you couldn't pass without knowing. That's a good example. So so passing shouldn't be the objective. And when the objective of passing becomes disconnected from gaining capacity, honestly, we should blame the educator, because that's what the educator is paid to do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tunji. I think there's some comments in the chat room that I agree with the both of you. Somebody says here that I opine that the subject should be taught from the perspective of what skills the subject has the potential to deliver. So that's referring to the English language. So, each subject apparently has a total of 52 skills. How many teachers are aware of this fact? So I think it's buttressing the point about how teaching and learning shouldn't be about passing exams, but about delivering skills, and that every subject, no matter what it is. I think you were the one who made a comment, Barbara, about not underestimating the importance of any one subject of study, any degree of study. And so that teachers should be aware of the fact that all subjects have the potential to deliver a minimum of 52 skills to young people, and should use that in their communication. And I think that also agrees with you, Dr. Tunji, in that it puts responsibilities squarely with the teacher. Another comment here is that it will be important to problematize employability as a CSR and investment issue. That way, it's one way to draw in the private sector, or draw in the industry, the market side of things, and have them make investments in our curriculum and skills development. We have just very few minutes left. And then one other comment here, and I think we mentioned this before, is that my opinion is that there is no clear vision or roadmap driving our education sector. It is important that Nigeria drives the capacity of its youth based on the basis of economic comparative advantage. This must start from an economic plan and should be aggressively complemented by character and citizenship education. We need to drive skills based on economic requirements to guarantee development. So I think we've talked along those lines earlier today. One of the comments says 80% can't get a job upon graduation. Solution: look at traditional methods. Change how you look at service jobs, which can grow on the back of primary jobs. I think we're going to need a little bit of explanation for that last one. Do we have any questions before we move on? Okay, so I have one last question for both of you before I let you go. And that's the question of when do we start? So, and what we were thinking when we came up with this question is, we imagined that teaching the skills of the future, we would identify 1, 2, 3, 4, that are the skills of the future, and just focus on those. But I think the conversation today has shown that we can't operate that way in a silo specifically. Education and industry have to be, at the same table. But really, what we're trying to find out, how early. So speaking as private individuals, as private service delivery actors like school owners, even government actors and policymakers, how early should we start to develop skills in young people? Are we talking about when they get into, after basic education, after they learn to read and write, or from the gate, from early childhood? And I would like to hear a perspective on that, and then we close.
From the gate.
Yes. From the gate. Okay.
And the reason I say that is because from birth, children, babies, they learn through play. And when we think about curiosity, I have a 6-year-old son, and if you ask him, tell me all the ways, okay, this is a pen, but it's also, tell me what else it is, he could probably create so many ideas and games simply from this pen. But the older, as that age progresses, we become less creative. We become, oh, it's just a pen, just give me the pen, it writes, and that's it.
Right.
So I think from a young age, there is an opportunity to build in the skills. So we're not necessarily thinking about grooming kids as young as sort of 5 and 6 for work, but you're thinking about actually how do you add value as a citizen of society, and where is the opportunity for you to be rounded, so that we learn the lessons and hopefully redress some of the challenges that we see in adults, in us at this stage and older. And so it's saying it should be in every process, it should be part and built into every curriculum, but also the responsibility of parents and caregivers to strengthen and solidify that. So the education to empower, it should be within each of us, but it should start from as young as possible. But that doesn't mean that whatever stage you find yourself in, that you can't begin to learn and develop. It just means that it may take a bit longer, or it may not be as natural. To do so. That would be my only sort of caveat. But I would say start from young, because that is where the canvas is plain, and there's an opportunity to build in those foundations and to do something that allows them to think outside the box, to be curious, to love learning for learning's sake, to read a book because they just want to, not because their teacher told them that they have to read the book, and then they don't read the book, then they can't watch TV or whatever, whatever the juxtaposition might be at that stage. So that would be my thoughts on this.
Thank you so much. Dr. Tunji.
Same answer. I think definitely from as mom and child are leaving the hospital. Okay, so I'm an educator, and I all my life I'm passionate about helping, I won't say developing people, helping human beings develop. It is really nice and enjoyable. You see how people transform. You see how they're at the beginning. You see how they're afterwards. It's not only you that's why I put that caveat. But I do think human capacity development, education can probably do more than we think. I'll throw something out there. You see a very bad policeman or an aggressive SARS operative or something. Is that 100% not being paid on time? Or is X% of it a human capacity thing, an attitudinal development, a values development? Because educating is knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. And education is trained, or supposed to be trained. We're supposed to be trained on the 4. And so my core answer is, and this is my parting shot, we need a massive quality upgrade, because we already know these things. When you go to a college of education, let's just say that every college of education in Nigeria is world standard. Everything we've talked about today is already part of the curriculum of a degree in education. How to do these things. And in fact, I'm going to share my screen for the very last time. This is a document I got from TEP Center, actually, because I was looking for it. Yes, I saw the TEP Center give it to me a few years ago, and it actually shows, this is a Nigerian document showing the expected learning outcomes for everybody in Nigerian educational system. This is early childhood, values, norms, competence and skills, primary education, values, norms, competence and skills, all the way down to junior secondary, competence and skills, senior secondary. You can see I'm interested in senior secondary anyway, acquired science, technology. And my point here, okay, it was Lagos State document, but my point here is that we know already. So supposing every educator was well-trained and was doing that, all these things will be happening. So to me, I would say that we're late, we need to start, but stuff we can do today is everything that can massively upgrade quality in the educational sector. Better educational training, so training the educators better, then every school excellent, every teacher excellent, because a lot is already boiled in, a lot is already there. We're just not doing it well. If we just say, okay, let's just have a smoothly running educational system, a lot of things Nigerians complain about, they'll find out that and you make these suggestions, we should do this, we should do that, we should do that. Many of those things are already part of it. It's just that they were not being done. So when it's now being done, you see that, okay, I didn't even know that was part of education. Because the only education I know is one I received. So I say, oh, I wish education were more practical. No, I wish my own education were more practical. Education is designed to be practical. But the one I got was not education, it was my own education. So if we do the education thing well, the way it's supposed to be, a lot of the things we're talking about won't be there. So anything for massive, speedy upgrade, it doesn't address the scale issue, but I feel scale comes from, so human beings, I have a thesis that human beings end up solving their own problems if you capacitate them. So maybe none of us on this call know the answer to Nigeria's problem. Maybe there's one 19-year-old out there that knows it. But we then train that person and give him or her what she needs, then she now goes to solve it. So if we skill everybody very well, one of them or a couple of them may get together and fix what we're all been breaking our heads to do. So massive upgrade, because a lot of this is already part of education when education is being done the way it should be done. So quality upgrade, to do it the way it should be, a lot to be taken care of.
Thank you so much to the both of you. You have been fantastic panelists. The time has flown by. I don't know how I would have managed the time with 3 panelists. We ended up just being 3 of us. So thank you to our audience also. You've been very engaging. I just want to close by saying, teaching the skills of the future today. The future is already here. And like Dr. Tunji said, we know what the issues are. We have a lot of this knowledge embedded in our policies and the design of our system. So we need to start paying attention to quality. And there's a role for everyone. We've talked about partnerships across sectors, across institutions, but for each individual actor. I remember as a child, I had a natural curiosity for everything. I think I've dropped off. And my father fed that curiosity by buying me books every day. And it became like a game. So I would try to finish the next book, the first book, before the next one came. And it's now prepared me for the life that I live now, because working in education, all I do is read and write, literally. That's my job description, except on days like this when I get to speak. So thank you so much for speaking with us and joining us at NEDIS. We're pretty excited to have had you guys. And I'll hand over to our master ceremonies to continue the event. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
That's good. Oh my God.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Barbara. Thank you, Tunji and Itibe. Thank you very much. I think this plenary was really engaging, really insightful. And if you remember what I said at the start of today's session, what we have seen from previous editions of NEDIS is that from conversations like these, ideas come up. Dr. Tunji just even mentioned it, but that was one of the last things he mentioned, right? You might not wait for an institution like the government. You might not have the time or the patience to wait for them to do any of these things. But in your own little way, in your space, how can you teach the skills of the future? And I dare say that so long as you know these skills already, that you know they exist, then it's no longer the future, right? It is the skill of today, because this is what is then taking you to transition through time and through and evolve with, a rapidly growing world. And so thank you very much once again for this particular session. After this, we'll have parallel sessions where we would talk on 2 major things. One is developing a demand-driven curriculum for the core skills in today's schools. And the second parallel session is exploring alternative pathways to skills development and economic growth in Africa. I myself, that is even announcing this, I'm probably overwhelmed by the keywords, the heavy words and everything. And I think maybe we just need to relax, take a break, take a glass of water or a drink, and probably even meet someone attending NEDIS right now. Like I said earlier, and I know people had joined in, people had introduced themselves. If you see someone that you really want to meet outside of NEDIS, you can as well just send the person a private chat message and get the person's contact details, because we'll be taking a 5-minute break now. The time is 12:06 by my watch, and so that means that we'll be back by 12:11, 11 minutes past 12 p.m. Nigerian time. So you can quickly do your calculation and see when you're coming back. But please, 5 minutes break, take a glass of water. We'll be coming back, and then everyone will then be given the opportunity to join which of the sessions you would like to join. But thank you very much, and I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Unfortunately, Fatima's story is... Here is Fatima. She is 8 years old and in primary 2. Fatima lives with her family in Wukari, Taraba State. She is unable to read, write. Here is Fatima. She is 8 years old and in primary 2. Fatima lives with her family in Wukari, Taraba State. She is unable to read, write, or even identify letters and numbers. Unfortunately, Fatima's story is not unique. She is one of millions of children in Nigeria who will grow up without learning if we do not intervene. The Education Partnership Center launched the Learn Nigeria Citizen-Led Household Assessment and Survey to ascertain the learning levels of children across Nigeria. In 2017, we assessed 49,000 children in 21,600 households across the country. The data has provided insight into the true state of things in Nigeria. Half the number of children in GSS 3 or grade 9 are unable to read at primary 2 level. We swung into action and implemented our Learn Nigeria remedial program. In just 24 days, we had halved illiteracy in children like Fatima from 71% to 34%. So we are convinced that there is hope. Through our work, children across Nigeria are emerging from the shadows of illiteracy and innumeracy. But we cannot stop until every Nigerian child has acquired the foundational literacy and numeracy skills that can position them to ascend the ladder of productivity and fulfillment. Join us in making more children and their learning a visible priority. After all, basic education is a fundamental human right. Please talk to us at partnerships@learnnigeria.org.